So I hope you can see it. This is a typical Tetra Pak, you know, your typical milk. And guess what? This is actually wine. Yes, Woolworth from South Africa.
Yeah.
Now, let me tell you the story on this. So I'll start by sharing my screen and then we take it from there, yeah? Tell me when you see the slides.
We do. It's opening. Yeah.
I'll just put it on slideshow. Just give me a sec. All right. So now, okay, you're wondering what the hell is that? So, you know, Rania, when you asked me to be a guest speaker on this, I was thankful because it's a very exciting topic. But also it made me go into my folders of lots and lots of travel, which I miss now. So whether I was going on business or pleasure, I always go to the stores. Yeah. I mean, it's a must. Whether I'm doing retail work or consumer work, I mean, I need to know how brands are evolving, the new innovations and so forth. So I was very happy to look into memories of, you know, this is from 2019. And if you're wondering where I am, I'm in Table Mountain. This is in Cape Town in South Africa. Beautiful city. I think I probably would want to retire there. And the reason I chose South Africa is it's a very interesting model for private label. Now, South Africa is a developing market and it's in Africa, yet the trade structure is mostly modern trade. It's actually 80% modern trade. And for those of you who don't know, mostly like Egypt is only 20% or 25% modern trade. And the reason I'm mentioning that is that private label grows well when you have a better modern trade structure versus traditional trade. The only exception in, you know, our part of the world would be South Africa and Saudi Arabia, interestingly enough. But the rest is like all traditional trade. However, you will see, I mean, observing all the international retailers are coming in and putting in a lot of outlets within that chain, you know, the Carrefours of the world and so forth, because it is a great opportunity on a grocery level. And then the other level is private label. In fact, the latest research predicts that by 2025, 30% of grocery sales will be private label. So if we don't jump into the opportunity now, we're losing a lot. And today I want to speak about the opportunity for the retailer, opportunity for the brand owners who will be fighting against these retailers. Tell you something, in Turkey, and I have a regional client, and they were telling me about their oil category in Turkey and the struggles that they're having, that 80% of the sales of oil is actually private label, with the exception of olive oil. See what I mean? So there's so much happening. And the other opportunity we want to talk about today is with suppliers. If you're into products, if you're into packaging, how can you leverage on and tap into the opportunity in those big retailers? They have big money, yeah, and they want to expand. So yes, I was in South Africa and I still, so this is from 2019. And I'll start by a few examples. One of my favorite examples is actually Clicks. Clicks is like, you know, Boots in the UK, like DM, Gregory Mark in Germany and Austria. They started in 1996, so very, very early on. And there was just a pharmacy. So you go in and, you know, you put your prescription and you take your medicine. Then bit by bit and over 20 years, they are now at a completely health establishment with their own private label. These are the results from, you know, year to date this year, and you can imagine, and this is a COVID year, they have 840 stores only in South Africa, and they've had a growth 7.2. Yeah. On the slide on the left-hand side, if you go to their online store, you will see that they have almost 2,000 SKUs labeled Clicks, and they have also a skincare, even specialized type of Clicks private label, yeah, and they are well branded, feel good, pay less. It's actually truly one of my favorite stores. The other example I want to share with you is Woolworth. Now, this Obviously, that's my photography. Now, there are three important observations in that shot. For starters, this is fizzy, non-alcoholic beverage. If you look at it, this looks premium, right?
Yeah.
The other thing, it has a lot of shelf space versus the national brand. So let's, in terms of terminology, there's the private label or store brand. And the other thing is national brand, which is the other brands, you know, owned by, you know, so like the Nestle's of the world and whatever. So just, you know, there's no confusion. So in terms of shelf space, they already have blocked a big part of the shelf of the category for their private label. Yeah. And the third observation is that, you know, label on the shelf on the bay, they are promoting, again, how to make cocktails with their own private label brands. Woolworth, and this is the example I gave you, you know, with that wine. Now, one of the choices a retailer needs to make is which brand, which categories they can actually do private label. Some can, some not. Now, it's interesting for South Africa because, as you know, they have vineyards and they're very famous with their wines. So how can a retailer like Woolworth get into it? They needed to disrupt the category, and the way they disrupted it is by the packaging. And you can see that the layout on the shelf is just amazing. It's so beautiful, and the range, they literally targeting female who are light drinkers, and the product and the design is really very eye-catching. It's beautiful. Yeah. Now, that example is not true for Spar in Vienna. This is Austria. Now, Spar is a very, very famous chain, and they're really around the world. But I mean, actually, I go to Vienna a lot. It's, again, one of my favorite cities. And these shots from 2019, the last I've been there. So you'll find their S, which is the budget brand. S, of course, is for Spar. On the left-hand side, this is their energy drink. And you know, the shelf space that they have, as you see, is huge versus their competition like Monster. Monster is owned by Coca-Cola and it's pretty premium. Now, when they launched chocolate, they had the Q of Switzerland, but this is chocolate. Okay, when you put there, it's a private label, and on it, it's budget. I mean, from a consumer perspective, I think there's a lot of hesitancy there, and it's true, it did not really fly. And therefore, Spar launched a range called Spar Gourmet. So again, part of their strategy is not only to stick to one format, but they went into another sub format. Yeah. And this is how all of this private label is developing. You've mentioned Migros, for example. It's a lovely chain from Switzerland, mainly premium, of course. And when they ventured outside of Switzerland, like in Turkey, they thought differently. They thought, no. For the first time, they launched under M, which is Migros, of course, a range, as you see down there in the picture. This is milk, tea, you know, sugar, all of the commodities, and it's under Migros. But they did not do the premium in those markets. Again, another example of how retailers would think when they go outside their homeland. Now, Whole Foods is probably one of the most beautiful examples of private label, and they started very, very early on in 1980, obviously in the US. Their CEO has a new book out, by the way, if you're interested to read that. He's a really fascinating person on leadership and so forth. And the story of Whole Foods is interesting. They started by simply, listen, we need to eat healthy. This is very, very early on the health trend. Yeah, and it's premium. It's expensive, all right, basically. And then by the time it was 2016, there was a lot of entrants. I mean, this is normal. You know, you always have a market leader that comes in, and then there's a lot of followers and so forth. We have this in Egypt. Everybody's claiming healthy, premium, whatever, or value, private label. That happens all the time. But for them, they started thinking, okay, we're very niche and premium. They had another store called End Range of products. 350, now 65, which is, you know, the number of days in a year. The idea was everyday healthy portfolio. So they cut down the portfolio, very selective and mid-range prices, and they opened these little stores for health so they can get some traffic versus all the premium exclusive type of stuff for them. And, you know, the story pretty much, you know, known that by 2017, they merged with Amazon. This is a 13 billion US dollars deal. Yeah, still, of course, full control for management is for Whole Foods, not for Amazon. But as you think of it, you know, it's a whole different ball game. These guys went very big on e-commerce because of this association with Amazon. And on the other hand, Amazon launched something called Amazon Go, which is really a bricks and mortar physical store. So, I mean, I don't want to get into this whole omni-channel, online, offline, because that's a separate discussion. But as you see, there is a lot of things happening in retail. But in reality, if you think about it, private label is not really a new concept. It's from the times of the war when you had loose products, okay, and you just package it for hygiene. And then what happened is, okay, let's label it. And then there was a retailer that was famous in the neighborhood. Okay, let me put my name on it. And the idea was very simple. The rationale is these guys, the shoppers, are coming to my store. So why don't they buy my brand? It's as simple as that. Yeah. So, I mean, of course, it started with commodities, and the range is of private label and the growth is really varying. So I can stress what you have said earlier, Rania, about the EU. It's even more evolved than the US, even though it said that 1 in every 5 SKUs sold in the US is actually a private label. But with Europe, there was a lot of hesitation around or confidence about the marketing. So people were not really believing the claims of the marketing. However, the equity of the retailer as a brand was very strong, that if they launched anything, people started to getting engaged in that. I mean, people like Lidl, for example, we're going to get a lot of examples from that. But if you think about it, it has come to the conclusion that a retailer brand could be even stronger than a consumer brand, okay, that is supported. And across the world, you will see variations. A part of it is the structure of retail, as I mentioned earlier, traditional trade versus modern trade. And it's estimated that today, as we speak, we're talking about billions of dollars, 158 billion US dollars sales of private label. Yeah. And again, shoppers, the generations are shifting. We're seeing that the younger, they don't want to, younger as in like, you know, what they call Gen Z and Gen Y. So we're looking at from 18 to maybe like early 30s. They are driven by two things. They want value, okay, because they don't want to spend a lot of money on you know, the usually groceries. It's not like, you know, the older ones. Yeah, they're more involved in their groceries, because they have other items to spend on, you know, all of that social media or whatever. Their interests are different, yeah? However, what intrigues them is innovation. And if there's something that they are, you know, emotionally or passionately about. So as you were mentioning, sustainability, things, you know, ethically grown cocoa or coffee beans, for example. This is coffee is huge, okay? It's exploding around the world in different dimensions. But if you see a pack that says, you know, sustainability, ethically farmed, and all of that, one part of, for example, in the COVID for this last year and still going on, is the fact that they want to support local farmers, because everybody's, you know, the economy is going down, all of this stuff. So this is part also what you were mentioning in the trends, and hence all of these markets about, you know, freshness, okay? They want to support the local community in terms of farming. And this is something engaging for younger generation versus older. There are two types of private label, just for people to get their head around what is private label. So this is a brand that has the name of the retailer or not. We're going to speak about this in a minute. And it could be value, okay, so something cheaper than the normal, or it could be premium. So usually the value, the first type, which is more popular actually in our market. So you got like pasta, and it has you know, in Egypt, for example, we have Carrefour. They have their brand called One, which is the value one. And they also have their international one, which is Carrefour. Yeah, we're going to speak about Carrefour in a minute. But usually it's a discounter format. It's value for money. And probably Aldi and Lidl are the most two famous ones in Europe that have done so well and really established that category. In Turkey, I want to give you an example of A10. A10 is like BIM. I mean, maybe people are more familiar with BIM, but they're both Turkish discounters. So A10, they have their own, you know, A10 type of categories. But when they wanted to enter coffee, they know that coffee is has a higher perception with consumer. The expectations are higher. It's highly emotional and so forth. It's like the chocolate example we had earlier from Spar. So they decided to call their brand in Turkey for coffee Cafex. So Cafex is owned by A10 and it will only be in the stores of A10. See what I mean? So you do have the option as a retailer to call it your name. Okay, like Migros, it's M, or you call it something else. It's the choice of the retailer, and it really depends on the strategy and the category and what they want to do. The second one, as I was telling you, it's about specialty products and premium. And I was in the UK, like I think this was the first time I saw PL, and it was Marks and Spencer, maybe over 15 years ago, and it was sauces. Yes, tomato sauce. And it was branded Marks and Spencer. This has evolved over 15 years that now they have their own food store, and everything there is premium, it's specialty, it's just spot on what consumer want in that area. And then, you know, as they say, the rest of history, everybody else starting copying and doing more of the premium rather than the value, because sales results coming from the retailers from around the world, particularly in Europe, it is suggesting that almost 30% of their revenue is coming from premium, not from value. But then again, let me tell you that retailers' expertise and savviness have gone, and know-how have increased so much that value is not really synonymous to cheap. No, it's actually, they've become really very good at doing even value. And therefore, somebody like Carrefour has been able to do both under their name of Carrefour, and this is from France. So they are able, because of their equity and their trust, to go into categories like oil and pasta and label it Carrefour, and still great. And at the same time, they're doing bio and organic and all of that, and still selling great. So the credibility here and the delivery of the product is very high. And you've got these shoppers coming in, you know, in terms of shopper insights, because I do a lot of shopper work, again, because it's linked to the retail and the channel strategies. Globally, we have around 70% of shoppers would shop in the same store every week or every month. So they already know their way, you know, they communicate with the people. You already know the guy on the cheese counter, the deli, and so forth. Probably that. Maybe in the last couple of years, and because people are looking for offers, they would go to 2 or more kind of formats for a top-up shopping experience or something like that. But again, there is so much value in retailers going into private label, because they are cutting the middleman, and they're doing directly for the person, for the supplier who are producing for them, and they're naming their terms. And in that respect, cutting that middleman gave them more power on cost, and therefore they're able to put on the shelf a private label that is in fact much cheaper, or sort of more value for the shopper, and that's what keeps them coming. So the situation for the last, I would say, skip the last 3 years, but before those 3 years, it was going like, it's better value, I have equity, local shoppers are coming to me, they are loyal to me, and it's eye-catching and shelf management, as we've seen with the, you know, with the Woolworth. I have control over my shelf and the store environment. I can push my private label versus others, and therefore I'm selling more of what giving me more revenue and equity, as well as loyalty to my shopper. So if you see this example, this is from Carrefour Egypt. This is their 2 brands in cleaners. So left-hand side, this is one, and you can imagine the whole category disinfectant is one. And on the other hand, this is Carrefour, the more premium cleaners. It has also a good shelf space versus the other national brands. So they can play in the game. This is their store. Yeah. Now, so today, and if you're looking at the last 3 to 4 years specifically, they are now very advanced. Retailers have become brand owners. You know, they've changed their organization. They've become, you know, the Nestle's of the world. Yeah. They are hiring fast-moving consumer talent. They're doing innovation, packaging, clean labels, clean packaging, state-of-the-art. They're looking into innovations. So it's affordable, healthy eating, diets, and so forth. Even the positioning. I mean, I work with a lot of consumer brands, but when this started getting into, you know, my focus, and that's why I actually say I'm brand and retail strategist, because this is what I do. Because today retail strategy has become very, very important. You need to build a brand, and that will be your showstopper for any brand. Why? Because it is the only way that you confirm and assure that shoppers will continue to come in and buy from your store. Because think about it, the retailer has only one universe to distribute in, their own retail chain. Okay. However, the brands will have all the other stores to distribute. So that's their only disadvantage. So to compensate that disadvantage, there are doing positioning, they're doing brand work, they're doing driving innovation. They're also consistency in the store experience. They want people to be loyal, and that store experience is also online and offline. So if they continue to do that, they are really, really getting into a threat to, you know, the other brand owners. However, it's not all that rosy. I'll give you an example from baby